What's up, everybody? It's Chris from ProPhoto, and this is Geared Up. This is our weekly live broadcast where we talk about lighting, from gear to techniques to how do you even use some of this stuff. Take your questions, have a good time, and just kind of yuck it up. Have some fun with photography. Today, pretty light, but hey, I see what I did there. I punned it out with the pretty light. That is nice. Today's pretty easy. We've had some people, especially newcomers to the ProPhoto system, trying to get a better understanding of channels and groups. And today, really quickly, we're going to kind of go through that and show you what the channels and groups do so that you're better able to control your ProPhoto stuff, making your workflow way more efficient. That's the kind of the beautiful thing about a lot of the new, or I mean, the Air system in general, but especially now with things like the Connect Pro and the app and stuff like that, and all the extra connectivity that you have, your workflow can be a lot more streamlined. You have way more information at your fingertips. So with that being said, let's just dive into what all this stuff does. So we have to start everything with channels. So the way that I like to describe the channel system is think of it as a family, okay? So you have all these different members of your family, but they are this one encompassing family. That's your channels. That is taking all of your lights, lumping them together, and when your camera sends off a trigger signal, the channel is what's telling all the lights to fire. So it doesn't matter if you have 50 lights all on channel 1, group A, they're all gonna fire. If they're all on channel 1, group B, they're gonna fire because that channel 1 is sending off the trigger signal to everything in that group. So your channel is your family. Now your groups are your individual family members. So you have your group A, your group B, C, D, E, and F. So there's 6 family members inside the grouping process. That doesn't mean that you can't have multiple lights on at the same group. Just know that whenever you're controlling that group, those lights are going to move at the same increment together. So if you need to group a couple of lights together, it might be best to have like 2 background lights grouped together to control them incrementally, as long as you have the right distances and stuff like that. But that being said, so if you're looking at the stuff in general, so like I've got an A2 right here, I've got a B10 here, I've got a Pro head here hooked to a Pro 11 pack over there in the corner, so you can see it here in a second whenever we go to the when you want to see the back of the light, so I can show you some stuff, we have another light. So they're all on the same channel. If I were to go over to my Connect Pro or to the app right here and trigger the actual flash, all of these would go off because they're all on channel 1. So if I wanted to control them individually now, I would set each one of them to their own groups. And it doesn't really matter how you set them to your groups. It just whatever workflow works best for you. A lot of the times you'll see people put things on group A for their main light, B for their fill light, C for hair or kicker lights, and D for background lights. In the ProPhoto world, your groups A, B, and C, especially if you're using some of the new stuff with TTL and high-speed sync, your groups A, B, and C are your TTL groups, are your TTL and manual groups. Your groups D, E, and F, those are manual only. Where that makes a difference is, so we've talked about this in the past, and you've seen Kate do a couple of shoots where she'll go on point and stuff like that. She's danced forever. Very, very good at it. If we wanted to photograph Kate in like a high key situation, so we wanted the background to be stark white, but Kate's going to be moving. So she'll be moving closer to the light, further away from the light, closer to the light, further away from the light. Instead of having to constantly change my power settings and try to manually do that, I could set my remote to TTL mode. The problem is I don't want the background changing. I want the background to stay the way that it is. So I could set my background lights to group D. So even though my remote is in TTL mode, the group knows that it doesn't accept TTL timing codes. It doesn't accept TTL commands. So the back's always going to stay the power level that I set it to. And then your front is going to be able to move in that TTL mode. So that's something else to think about in the group situation with this. So again, your channels talk to everybody, and your groups are your individual family members. So, and then to break that down a little bit more, your groups A, B, and C are TTL and manual. Your groups D, E, and F are manual only. I'll show you, I'll open up the app here in just a second and show you that too, because you can see it visually. You can also see it, maybe I'll pull out one of the A10s and show you, even on the back of the A10, it shows you that its group D no longer has a TTL thing on there. So let me show you here on this iPad, if we can. So right now we're in manual mode, and you can see that I have.
What do you have there pulled up on your screen?
So what we have here on the iPad. Thank you, Caitlin.
You're so welcome.
That's the second time today you used my entire name, and
I know you used it back at me.
And I was very clear earlier that you do not use my full name.
I use it when I have to.
So for the most part, this is set up like the Connect Pro is. So and also if you have the Connect, the little dot remote, it will be the exact same on the inside. So if you wanted more group control over the little buttonless remote, the Connect, you would run it through the app, and then you would have all the same control. So up here at the top, you can see I can control my group A just by kind of swiping left or right. I can turn my modeling light on and off. I can actually turn the group on and off. So this is really good too, because you have full control of your groups. If we're shooting and I decide I just don't like my hair light anymore, then you know what, boom, hair light's gone. You can simply turn it off. And that's the beauty of having this individual control over your groups, is the fact that now I can do everything right from a central command center. Or say you have a Digitech for a job, you can have them run, you know, the remote and stuff like that from this one central command center, especially now with the app for the computer, for the Mac. So you have all this control individually over each one of your lights, which is really, really nice. But if I were to flip over up here at the top to automatic mode, you'll notice here, like I said before, your D, E, and F still say manual, even though the top two are going to give you your flash exposure compensation control here. If you look down here, I still have the actual power setting control for those D, E, and F. So that's something to keep in mind. Cool. And yeah, so you can, let's flip to the back of the thing. So we have this light here just so you can kind of see. So when you go inside your stuff, inside your flash, first and foremost, if you ever don't see a channel in a group here and it says air off, you need to actually turn the radio on the flash. So the first thing you can do before you can even select your channel in groups is you have to actually enable air now. And so now that it's enabled, we can go in here and we have, with the newer systems, you know, we have up to 100 channels, you know, ton of channels. You can scroll infinitely to 100. But this, again, are your channels. This is how you control the whole group of lights together. And then here is where you designate what group you want that light to be on. So you have, again, your A, B, C. And then, again, the cool thing is with the system is once you go to D, it's telling you there is no TTL on this. That's not to say that you don't have high-speed sync. You still have high-speed sync. Just the flash will not change its power settings in TTL mode. So that's something also really, really good to know. So A, B, and C, D, E, and F will all do, they'll all do high-speed sync. It doesn't care about, it doesn't care if it doesn't have TTL. The pins are there for the timing codes, but it's not accepting a power change, but it can see those timing codes and it can fire at whatever shutter speed you want. So again, same scenario with Kate dancing. If I have the background lights that I want to stay the same, but I want to speed my shutter up a little bit more for some reason, maybe I'm fighting some ambient light, who knows what's going on. Maybe, you know, I'm in a studio with a whole bunch of windows. I can push that shutter speed up some more. And even though those backlights are manual, they will fire perfectly well in high-speed sync. Any questions from anybody?
No.
I can't imagine. I was about to say, I can't imagine that there's a lot of questions with this stuff. It's pretty simple. Again, just to kind of reiterate how the groups work, they are individual family members of the channels, which are the family themselves. So think of it like that. Channels are your family, talks to everybody. your groups are your individual pieces.
What are the different remotes that you use
So
for ProPhoto?
if someone asked,
Just curious.
oh, Kate wants to know what different. So I don't think I have a lot of
I
them.
wanted to see if you have them all out.
So I can have them all out. So currently, I only have the two TTL versions of the remote. So this is the Connect Pro that you're used to seeing right here. You saw me holding up like this in the screenshot. And then you actually have the Connect, which is, this is my little backup remote that I always kind of have with me. Or if I'm trying to keep it pretty slim and I'm using one light, I'll take this one with me. But these are our two current TTL options, TTL and manual options. Whereas we still have the, the OG Air remote for full manual control and stuff like that, especially if you need like breakout ports for like sync cables and stuff like that. But these two are going to work in tandem with the app. All of the three current remotes that we have give you access to all 6 groups. The older Air remote is only going to give you access to 8 of the channels on those groups. But you still have access, or 8 of the channels on the system, but you still have 6 groups. Sorry if I kind of mucked those words up there a little bit. But again, the Connect and the Connect Pro, full 100 channels, 6 groups, TTL manual, full high-speed sync, all that stuff there. So now you have a better understanding of how channels and groups work.
Okay, we do have a question. Chase is asking, what's the most number of lights you've operated with or for a shoot? How do you keep track of the individual lights? Is there a good way to...
So here you can actually, here's a good way to keep track of them. If you want to pop up the app real fast. So the cool thing about the Air system is you can fire a ton of lights. I think they say technically the system only fires 32 lights, but it's a radio signal being blasted out just saying fire. So in reality, you can actually shoot a whole lot. Now, what's cool in these systems is you can go into, here's like my Pro 11. I could go in and name this, I can name this my main. And then once that's done, saved, I'm in the app. And so when I'm down here, I know that that's my main. Oh, hey, you can add a label up here now. I didn't know this. Check this out. So in the app now on the remote, you can add a label that says your main light, bop. So now I know that group A is my main light, so I can control that here. And then so on and so forth down things. So that's in the app. That's not going to reflect inside the remote. The remote just doesn't have the wording. I guess technically it would have the ability to do the wording. I don't know that you have the real estate for it. But kind of in a studio setup where you need to keep track of a lot of stuff like this, you could have an iPad or the ProPhoto control app open for stuff like that. But you can totally name your groups here in the remote. You can actually name your lights too, just like I did here down here with my Pro 11. So you can name them that way as well. If you're using, say you're using an older Air remote, like the original Air remote, for example, or maybe the older TTL remote that doesn't have the interface like this inside of an iPad, but you're still maybe using a Pro 11 or using some B10s or like an A2 that do have Bluetooth, you can connect to those. So like what happens with the system right now, because I'm using Connect Pro, it deactivates my ability to change my power settings because it's saying, hey, I want you to control everything through the remote. That way we don't get out of sync from the lights. But if I was to turn this remote off, it'll disconnect here in a second. Now all my controls are here for my other lights. So again, if you're using an older remote, but you still have Bluetooth lights, you can do the same thing. So I know that I have main here. You have all your secondary controls for everything. And you can still control all your power and whatnot like that. You can still see your groups, 1A, 1C, 1A, 1A here. Apparently, I've decided to put almost all of these on 1A. So I'm really doing this the right way. But the other cool thing about the app is I can go in here, I can change that.
Okay, so Marshall is saying, why do the B10s have such a small node to fasten them? Is there an alternative? Like, I guess actually to get it on to it?
Small node to fasten them? I'm not sure what you're talking about. Are you talking about the actual stand adapter itself? Are you talking about the actual port here, the socket where it actually goes into the light stand? Just elaborate a little bit for me. I'm not really 100% sure you're talking about with a node.
Michael says that
or maybe you're saying
Valley fired 23 at one time.
Yeah, you can fire a lot at one time. There
Cool.
are arenas who have like D1s and D2s, in the rafters shooting straight down, like just arrays of flash heads shooting straight down. The cool thing is they're all shooting downward at the same distance, so they can all be set to the same power level. But there are, lots and lots of lights up there shooting straight down. So a ton of power, and 1,000-watt lights each. Pop, 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 pop. That's a whole bunch of stuff.
Dejana says, I have the original remote,
Mhm.
and it seems as though I cannot have one group on TTL and the other on manual. Is this correct?
So if you have the original TTL remote, this is actually a good thing to talk about. So the original TTL remote, I don't have one anymore. Mine was lost in shipping.
How fun.
But I have Connects Pros now, so I'm not super worried about it. But if you look at the originals, you had the A, B, and C on the thing, and you didn't have access to control D, E, and F. But it still fires groups D, E, and F, because again, everything is on the same channel. So all the A, B, C, D, E's, and F's do is designating individual controls of this overall family that's being triggered at one time, right? So even though you might have an original TTL remote without access to D, E, and F on the remote, it still fires D, E, and F. And it still is manual only D, E, and F. That's because in the system it's baked in that way. But I think we had designed the system to do it that way originally, and I believe that we maybe didn't have the way to set it up with the remote to be able to flip between the two. So that's why there's only that's why there's only A, B, and C on the actual remote itself. Whereas with the Connect Pro, we've come a long way with the way that we control things. But you can still do your D, E, and F with the original TTL remote. You'll just have to actually walk over to the flash and change the power, or if you're using one of the new lights with Bluetooth in it, you can do it from the app.
Let's see, one other question. James says, when at a group shoot setting, how can I potentially ask someone with 1 to 2 strobes to not use channel 2 so I do not have to change all 6 of my strobes?
Are you talking about a second shooter?
Yeah, if you could elaborate a little bit, James, I'll pop that on the screen so people can see your question.
So if you're worried about someone who randomly has a ProPhoto rig, unless it's a second shooter, that's why I'm asking if it's a second shooter, because that's really wild for someone to be running around with a ProPhoto rig. Maybe someone's got an A1 that they just are photography enthusiasts and they wanted an A1 or an A10. You could, if that's the case, if it's just like an enthusiast that has a really nice A10 on there and that's all they're doing, you could just tell them to turn their air off. Be like, hey, apparently you and I are set to the same channel and I have this large array of lights set up. Would you mind just turning your air system off? Or would you just mind changing your channel? That way, I mean, you're the pro at that thing, so they should respect that stuff. But that would be the easiest thing to do, as opposed to just having to go through and change all your stuff. If push comes to shove and they just won't, and you have to change your stuff, the app's probably the easiest way if all of your stuff is Bluetooth enabled. What I would simply...
2 different ProPhoto shooters in different rooms.
Yeah, then
that's his question.
If you have 2 different ProPhoto shooters in 2 different rooms, if you're not working with that person, I don't necessarily know that there is a way that you can just go up to someone else in another room and be like, hey, don't do that. You might just have to change it. So what I would probably do, again, if you have all Bluetooth lights, if you have some of the newer stuff, I would go ahead and preload all your stuff into your app. So be it on your phone or an iPad or something like that. And if push comes to shove and they're using your channel, you could simply go in and do quick channel changes.
Hold on, let me move you over to the screen. Sorry.
Yeah, so you could simply you could simply punch into the gear, go in here, change your channel to 2. Same thing. I mean,
this is why the app is.
This is why the app is sick. And then and that's why I was saying, if it's in a situation where you're going to need to move kind of fast, go ahead before the event even starts and preload it and have it running inside the app. And that way you're not having to sit there and wait for it to search for all your lights. It sees them. And then you can go in there really, really quickly and change those channels. Now, if you work with the person, I would just be like, hey man, I'm operating on 7, you operate on whatever. I think another good thing that you can start doing is just finding a higher channel to operate on, because most people don't do that. Most people pick channels 1 and 2 to start off with. So hopefully those were some answers.
All right, let's see. Michael Shane. I'm gonna pop that question.
Hey.
Can you tell me how to get my Connect Pro to always show my flash power? Sometimes it just shows as 0.
Yeah.
And I can adjust up or down even when I'm in manual mode.
So here, let me turn my Connect Pro back on and we'll show you on the remote.
Sorry, let me move you over here.
Oh no, sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Yeah, turn it back on so it pops back up here so you can see it. So when you're in TTL mode, so this could be a one of, sorry, let me say 2 different things. This could be one of 2 answers. One, if you notice up here, I clicked auto, but if you notice up here next to the little battery symbol on my iPad, there's a little 2 in parentheses. That's Air 2 mode. That's the mode that you need to see the power levels of your flashes that are compatible with that. So, your B10s, your A10s, your A2s, your Pro 11s, the D2, those are compatible with Air 2. That's the mode you have to be in to see those power settings. The other thing is if you're in automatic mode, you're not going to see those power settings because groups A, B, and C are not trying to give strict power numbers. What they're doing is giving you flash exposure compensation options because TTL is always going to change the power for you based on what the camera thinks it needs to make that scene 18% gray or to make whatever the meter spot is looking at 18% gray. That number is going to fluctuate. So what you're going to have in TTL mode is the option to compensate that TTL to say, okay, camera, I understand that you want to do this, but I want you to go, a half a stop higher. So you compensate it up. So if you're in TTL mode, there's no way to make this thing read out your numbers because it's trying to do flash exposure compensation and not give you hard numbers. Now, that being said, if you've taken a TTL shot and you're happy with the exposure and nothing's going to change, you could flip back over to manual mode, and there your power settings are going to be, even after a TTL shot. So you could take that TTL shot, let the flashes set to what they want to, and when you jump over to manual mode, the correct power of that TTL shot that you took is what's going to be showing here on the remote or in the app. Anything else?
Thanks.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Unless anybody has any other questions, pop them in real quick.
Yeah, if you have any other questions right before we sign off, we'll peace out of here. We'll give it another 30 seconds. But again, this was just maybe you needed a refresher on what channels and groups do. Maybe you didn't know about the TTL and manual features in the Air system, something that's fun to know about. This also hopefully will serve as a jump off point for maybe someone who's new to the ProPhoto system and maybe they only have 1 light right now and you're thinking about adding a second light. This is how you control those. This is what the significance of channels and groups do. So again, just to kind of wrap it up while we're waiting to see if there's any other questions, think again like the system is a family. Cool?
Okay, James says, not all Bluetooth, lots of A1 units, accent lights, A2, B10, B10 Plus, B1X. I suppose my answer is to upgrade to a Connect Pro or use a higher channel.
So Connect Pro is not going to fix, so I see what you're saying. Connect Pro is not going to fix the fact that you have some lights that aren't Bluetooth. You can't change that on the remote itself. You have to actually be inside the app. So the best case scenario might just be, so since you have some lights that are still like the B1X they can only go up to channel 8, your best bet might be to start at channel 6 or 7. Pick a number that you don't think someone would pick and just live there. Because again, most of the time, I go to trade shows all the time for things, and people hit channels 1 and 2 almost nonstop. So you'll always find me at you'll generally, I'll tell you, if you want to hack me at a trade show, my favorite number is 7. So the chances are I'm working on channel number 7. From here on, I'll probably go to 77 now that I've told you guys my secret. And from there, I need to now choose 57. So now that I'm giving away all my stuff.
All your secrets.
But if you ever see me at something like that, I'm always on a higher number because people generally don't pick those. But with certain lights like your B1, you have 1 through 8 to choose from. So just pick a random number in there that's not 1 or 2. Cool.
Awesome.
So again, just to wrap it up before we go, Your channels are your family. It's all your family members combined together as one big group. And so when you take a picture, it says, hey family, activate. Hey family, activate. Hey family, activate. Your groups are your individual family members. So if I want this family member to be a little bit louder and this family member to be a little bit quieter, I can go into my remote and I can tell those groups what it is that I want to do. Groups A, B, and C, TTL and manual. Groups D, E, and F, manual only. That's really, really good. Again, if you have some background lights that you want to stay constant, but maybe you have some motion in the front that you need the TTL to constantly change the flash power of your flash for the exposure. So
Beverly says, do you have to use the app to use the remote?
no, you do not have to use the app to use the remote. I'm using the app because it's easier to show you what my remote looks like than it is to hold my remote up like this and be like, oh, it's doing all this stuff. But you don't have to use the app to use the remote. The app just, in certain scenarios, the app is easier. In certain scenarios, there's no way you're going to see me pulling out my phone to mess around with something. That's another reason that I use the Connect Pro over the Connect for my my higher end shoots, a lot more of my personal stuff, or if I'm just running around run and gun, you'll see me with the little Connect. But for the most part, Connect Pro for me, because unless I'm in a studio situation. Yeah, unless I'm in a studio situation, for the most part, you're not going to see my iPad with my app out. Cool.
Very cool.
Sweet. Well, thank you all so much for coming and hanging out with us today. I know that this was not a lot of photography, but it was more information based. But I want to make sure that as we do some of these creative things, we also don't forget to make sure you understand how the technical aspects of all this stuff work. So in the meantime, I hope you have an awesome rest of your week.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Enjoy your evening. Stay safe. Peace out.